be really quick.
Thanks, Mark Farrow. I'm a builder developer rep.
I'm Glenn Fee, I'm the Department Executive Director of Fall River Keepers.
Mike McKellen, representing District 3.
Lagos, manager in Tualatin, and I'm a non-voting rep representing the cities of Washington County.
Elaine Stewart, I'm a retired ecologist and an environment rep.
Matt Wellner, one of the other builder reps.
Joe Gall, I'm the Chief Utility Relations Officer for the district.
Terry Song, Business One and Chair. Mark Doctor, Chief Staff and Water Services.
Jody Newcomer.
The editor, like she is. Okay, go. Round. Name.
Skylar Anderson, I'm a wastewater treatment operator with the Rock Creek facility in Water Services.
Chris Gardner, Senior E&I for Rockford Facility.
What's the E&I?
I was just assuming everybody.
Thank you.
Electrical instrumentation.
Thank you.
Oh, would not have done that.
I'm Mike Morrow. I work for Buildox in over at Murray Port.
Brett Manningham, I'm an operations analyst, and I look over the two screwdriver recovery facilities.
Kevin Wegner, operations analyst, digestion, anaerobic digestion materials.
I'm Tina Aragati. I work in the lab at UPC.
Noah Harvey, I'm the operations supervisor here at this facility.
Emily Stevenson, I'm a lab specialist at UPC also.
And Paul Buckmaster, and the superintendent for pump stations.
Yes, please.
Shannon Cummins, community. Perspective community. That's the Chief Financial Officer with Clearwater. Jamie Wells is the chief. And we want services, executive assistant, CBO.
Logan Holmes, Chief Utility Operations Officer.
Josh here, Clearwater Services.
Kate Braxton, executive assistant. Mark Roberts. Yeah.
Stephanie Morrison, Administrative Program Manager.
He duels on.
Julie Cortez, communications. Katie Baker, communications and community engagement. Michelle Hayes, president.
Steve Sheldon, Water Services.
Now I'm gonna go on, I'm going up to the screen here, Alex, you wanna introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm standing outside of 16060. Apparently I'm at the wrong place, but Alex representing District 1. If someone could let me in, that'd be great.
So where are you?
He's at the TV.
Up there.
Oh, he's up at DPS, okay.
Yeah.
Someone to you now.
Thank you.
Yeah, you should get in the car and then you're gonna drive through the gate and come all the way down.
Okay, got it.
Take a right, follow it down.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you, Alex. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. Diane's not here. She's out ill. Joe is sitting in for her tonight. We have a little unusual start to the day, which we have our folks here are from our operations challenge teams that are going to talk a little bit about a competition that they were in Chicago a couple of months ago. I guess just a month ago, right? It was October. So they've got a bunch of things they want to show us. So I'm going to just hand it over to them. So whoever's in charge.
We want to go there on the other side of them.
Okay, so, okay. You want to get up? We're going to walk over here. Oh, you are there. Okay. You can go to the other building. Oh, we're going to walk. Yeah.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak here in front of all of you, talk about our Operations Challenge program. Something near and dear to my heart, been on the team for a little over 10 years now. I'm going to start the conversation by explaining what Ops Challenge is, to those of you who don't know. Chris will take over from there and tell you what it is we do physically. And then Brett will talk about our makeup of our team. And then several of our other members are going to talk about their personal experiences going through the program. So to start off, what is Operations Challenge? It's a workforce development program, and it's often described as the best of its kind among those who have gone through it. Also, it's something referred to as the wastewater Olympics. It's a highly competitive events on an international stage. I believe both. As a workforce development program, Operations Challenge is more than just a competition. It's a school of skills, responsibility, goal setting, and it focuses on continuous improvement. These two teams engage in 5 diverse events, each demanding unique expertise. The power of the team lies in diversity, with team members bringing various knowledge and experiences to their problem-solving abilities. In these teams, there's no hierarchy. It's just all of us working together for a common goal. Like the Olympics, these dedicated individuals train rigorously, honing their skills and mastering intricate movements. It takes talent, unwavering dedication, mental toughness, and resilience to compete at this level. And much like the Olympics, steroids are strictly prohibited. These teams, these teams not only compete and represent clean water services that are regional competitions at the CWA, they also go to Left Tech, where they represent in front of international teams. This year, there were 3 divisions, 56 teams. I believe there were 6 or 7 other countries represented as well. And one of our teams, Fuba Trupa, emerged victorious and won first place.
Wow.
Yeah. So the people who volunteer on this team, we don't get any extra money. We certainly don't get less work. But it takes a lot of time and effort in our days. And we do it because we're driven and we have more to give. We look for opportunity to grow and represent what it is to be the best clean water services. Operations Challenge is not just a competition, it's an testament to our dedication, growth, and relentless pursuit of excellence. It showcases the unsung heroes of an organization who are committed to making a difference every day. More? Chris?
All right, I'm gonna give you just a quick rundown, see some of the all the equipment and stuff in the background. That's kind of been my my niche, I guess, in all this. This year, Kevin and I tried, Kevin succeeded, I know, to step off of the team and be more of a coaching and support role. Due to certain staffing issues, one of the members had to step off the team, so I had to compete again. But what I was tasked with this year was trying to make sure that we had every piece of equipment we could possibly get to train like we compete. So one of their veterans, when I first got on the team, one of the veterans who came to me and said, number one thing, you need to train like you compete. Need something to do it, get it. And I ran with that. Probably a little too hard. But Ops Challenge is made up of 5 different events. 4 team members are competing. Every team member has to engage somehow. I can't have somebody sit out. I can't sub people in. So you get the 4 team members. They compete in a knowledge test. There's a knowledge exam, test your knowledge of wastewater and beyond. Laboratory, like you see here. This is actually we have a lab version doing that. Collections. This is a simulated repair of a 8-inch SDR sewer line. All these things are done with no power tools. Well, next year there will be power tools, but right now there's no power tools. So he's hand brace, drill through that pipe. And we're going to install the insert a T, take a section out, put it in their section, sperm hose. And we try to do that event is try to be done in about less than a minute and a half. So, we have a safety event. As you saw in the lobby when you came in there, we have our friend James there hanging out. He is a simulated confined space entry. So there's a guy who went into the head, there's a damaged valve, passed out, we have to rescue him and then finish the repair. So a lot of moving parts when it comes to that event. This year, we also had a new event. So every 3, 4, 5 years, they actually change events. Different vendors, reps come in. This year, Bond Company out of Montesino, Washington, they sponsored the maintenance event. We actually have a live running vertical pump and a tank. And we have to pull it out, replace the impeller, replace a couple parts, do some real electrical checks for meters, and then put everything back into service. And that was a highly competitive event. When you think you have 55 teams from all over the world practicing this, trying to be the best of the best, you have a lot of competition that you're up against.
Our team came in second.
So that's the basic rundown of the events, what we kind of do. Brett here is going to talk about how the teams are made up.
Hi, again, my name is Brett Laney. I'm an operations analyst here at Web Services. I've also been a team member since 2014. And this year was pretty special. 2 teams. I think it's the most diverse group of competitors that we've ever had in Operations Challenge. The eight competitors represented 5 different work groups throughout the district. I just want to recognize each one here. Team Koopa Trooper.
Trooper.
Represented operations, electrical and instrumentation, the district lab, and field operations. And then Team River Rangers represented operations, electrical and instrumentation, the district lab, and technology development and research. This diversity in education, experience, and expertise meant that each team member brought something unique and needed for their team's success. My favorite part this year, I think, even though we had 2 teams, we truly prepared and practiced and competed as one team. We would share, in practice, we would share we'd watch each other practice, share our observations, share strategies, and encourage each other. And then at CWAC, which is our regional conference, or at WEF, our national conference, if one team was competing, the other team was there to cheer them on. And I like to recognize that as a great example of what our goals in the district are as far as team building and working together for a common goal. Who wants to go first? Skyler, let's go.
Sure. Skyler, again, wastewater treatment operator of Rock Creek. Just basically gonna be telling you guys I had a great time. Thought it was amazing. I got to meet people that I don't get to see every day. Working inside a plant, we're kind of stuck in that plant. Don't get to go out as often. I get to meet my field ops comrade. I get to meet the superintendents from a different plant, the operations supervisor from a totally different plant, the lab individuals I send samples to every day. It was just a really good time. And in operations, I take certification testing so I can have a state certification to be an operator, right? And I study all the time. And I feel like this actually helped me progress more in my knowledge of wastewater than me studying alone. So I thought this was really actually quite a very influential thing for me. So.
I'm Emily. I work in the lab. And I think echoing what Skylar said, our work group tends to be pretty isolated. So I love getting to work with people from different departments and different facilities, learn from them and train for this. And I think like an example of how this gave you really good perspective for how my work fits into other work groups in the district was studying for the process control test. And I really got to see how operators and analysts are using the data that the lab generates on a day-to-day basis. And I think that gave me really good context for the work that I did. So overall, it was a great experience.
Noah, operations supervisor. My experience was just a little bit different in that Chris mentioned that one of the team members had to step away. Chris was coaching. He stepped up to be part of the team, so they asked me to coach, which I was more than happy to do. But they were already practicing, and You know, when I stepped in, I knew about half of the people on the teams, but they immediately accepted me. You know, I felt a part of the team immediately. So, you know, my biggest takeaway, it was great. The competitions are great. Winning one of the divisions in Chicago, a complete shock to all of us, honestly. We had no idea because we had finished second in one of it, third in another,
Fourth and 10th.
but we didn't know we finished fourth in the others. So when they announced our names, you know, winning, it was an amazing moment. So for me, my biggest takeaway is getting to know these amazing people. We really have amazing people that work here. And I'm just so appreciative and thankful for that opportunity. So, yeah.
So I'm also in the lab. You know, that's a lot of fun because in the lab you are in a literal box, like we're locked in. So going through the ops challenge scenarios was eye-opening to me on what other people in the district potentially do on a daily basis. So that was very eye-opening for me, and it was so much fun.
I'm Emily Tomardo. I'm from Field Ops. I work on the big Vector trucks doing line maintenance, and this is I've only been here for a year. So when Kevin came to Field Operations and said, hey, we've got this thing, Operations Challenge, you know, and showed a little preview off of YouTube, you know, does anyone want to compete or join or anything? And I'm like, what? You mean we can do something like that here? Like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And everyone's like, oh yeah, whatever. And I'm like, I'll do it, you know, to compete. How exciting is that? I have no idea what I'm getting myself involved, let alone I'm just learning what I'm doing as my own job every day. So going to practices and this and that, I had coworkers saying, do you even know what you're doing? Like, are you okay? Like, yeah, I got this, no, I don't know. And then I come back and I had to help construction out with the pipe rehab. And the guys are down there like trying to figure it out with the Milwaukee tools. I'm like, wait a minute, I can do that faster than you guys can. And they're like, whoa, hold on. No, I got this. This is my practice. What was great for him? Oh yeah. There I am. What was great about it is that I could also take this home with me and tell my kids, like, hey, mom's competing again. Guess what? You know, and the kids had no idea what I was doing, but I got to bring my husband, and their dad's face was like, oh my gosh, your mom's doing really cool things. You should see everything your mom's doing. And her team is like her family, you know, and it felt good that he felt good that I was in a good spot. And I felt that this is amazing. And I wanted that to show not only to Field Operations that a lot of these guys have not really even heard about it. You know, they've known about it, but they didn't know anything. And I got to bring that experience to them and also work with an amazing group of people that I see now every day that's like family. So I'm very appreciative. And then how they were saying the diversity, when they came to the process test, I think I sweated more knowing that I had to take a math test. Anything, like I froze, like SATs. I don't even know if I could spell my name right, but they were like, just do the best you can. You're gonna be fine. I mean, if I wanted to cheat, I wouldn't even know how to cheat because I don't even know what it was like. But I actually got a lot of things right. And I surprised myself, and I did study quite a bit. I had tons of books that I even borrowed and asked, even people in Field Operations let me borrow their stuff to learn. And I thought it was great. And I'm like, I will do anything hands-on, physical, than I would do a math test, but I got to do it all. And the diversity of it was well needed. So.
So Paul Buckmaster, superintendent now, but when I started, I was in E&I, so I've been an electrician for 22 years. So one of the coolest parts I thought was echoing everything they said, is just meeting all these people. And the part like Brett mentioned about everybody bringing something to the team, it's really amazing how during these events, we had to adapt to everybody's strengths. And so our two lab individuals were actually our electricians, even though we had two guys that have been electricians for our entire careers. But after practicing, we found that we were better suited to be on the big wrenches with the hammers and the, and they picked it up and they learned how to run a meter and check the cable leads and check for seal leak and, do all the tests on this pump. And I learned how to do lab work and I learned how to do the process test and all the stuff that I was uncomfortable with. So it really, you couldn't do it with 4 operators or with 4 maintenance technicians. It takes a whole bunch of different backgrounds to make this really successful. And so that was the most amazing part for me. It's just how we all helped each other and both teams helping the other teams also. And walking away from it with, I didn't realize how much I was going to get, but as part of my superintendent, I have to get my collections 4, and I've been studying for that. And as I've started studying, I've realized how much I learned in Ops Challenge that is actually on that test. And it's kind of exciting because I got a head start because of this. So it's what a great opportunity, what a great team. Yeah. It's super fun, but also educational, team building, and really valuable to the district. So
That's about what we have. Anybody have any questions?
So I want to say one thing just to make sure. I don't know, how long have we done Ops Challenge? I mean,
1989.
so 34 years. Teams from Clean Water Services or the Unified Sewerage Agency have been competing in this. We've never placed actually. So this was amazing.
Placed first.
What?
We've never placed first.
We never placed first. So it's incredible. So it's just a really, and it was a group of people. This is that Division 2 is the first time that all of you participated.
for ours, yeah.
Yes.
We were all brand new members on the team. It's quite but we had some awesome coaches.
Yes.
And some really great mentors, and the other team had a couple of veterans that really showed us a lot of stuff. So I think as a Division 3 team, we had an advantage because of the other team there to support us. So.
Where was the competition?
So we have a regional competition this year was in Tacoma for the regionals. That qualifies the teams to go to national web tech competition next year. This year was Chicago, next year will be New Orleans.
Okay.
Are you working with live wires in the water?
The pump is live. It's a 208 3-phase pump. That's
So it's kind of fraught with peril, huh? I mean, somebody can get hurt.
The procedures there's a very written out thorough procedure that you follow. All these events have rules. There's judges that watch everything that you're doing. Stop watching. They're like they're right here watching. Super annoying camera guys. So it's like I said, there's 4 or 5 judges that are watching everything that's happening. So if you do something out of sequence, they'll stop it. They'll stop the event right there. So if you try to remove the pump without locking the power out and verifying, that's one of them. This is the first year with the Bond Fowler pump. But before this, they had a KFB pump. They ran for about 5 years. And I remember when that came out, it was a live pump also. That's an electrician. I'm like, this is a bad idea.
I can say, so you put the impeller in and the power's, the juices to it?
It's all locked out.
Okay.
There's a very, very thorough lockout, takeout procedure, and there's a front of the control panel, there's the test port. So that's our electricians. They actually have to verify that there is no power on all of these, the legs to ground, to each other.
Okay. The electrician verifies de-energized, the safety supervisor in the event verifies it's de-energized. Then the electrician does it again, check for no voltage, as before the pump can be pulled.
Can't touch it.
I'm glad to hear that. Safety. Yeah.
Do both teams compete in the same events?
Yes.
You just had, everybody does the same thing, you just had 2 teams.
Yeah, we have one Division 2 team because it was made up of an existing team, existing members. And they had a new division, Division 3, which is for all brand new teams. So we were able to create that second team, it was all brand new people, brand new team name, everything. So they were able to compete in the division.
Divisions based on experience then.
Yes.
So next year, that Division 3 team moves up to Division 2.
Super impressive. Oh my God.
Well, congratulations. So who wants to explain the virtual reality?
So, yeah, so the VR one is a simulated confined space rescue, and it's kind of a training program. And we ended up getting the license the day before the event in Chicago. So we didn't have a lot of time to practice, but you have to pick out your PPE and check, make sure you don't have broken equipment. So you have to inspect the gear. And then go out into the field, set up barricades, fill out a confined space form, and go in and rescue a downed person and shut it out. And do it as fast as you can. And the score that we got on the VR actually took time off of our safety event. So you could get up to, I think we ended up getting 30 seconds taken off both teams. Chris Tyndall's one that did it for their team, and we tied it exactly. So how fast? I think we're,
Oh, that's
under, it was under 40 seconds. Under 40. It was.
Yeah, we had, like I said, we got the license the day before, so we were across the street in a park in Chicago.
VR on a locker. And it was right after the Bears had played. I think we're leaving the Bears team, we're walking by looking at us. They were grumpy, they did lose, you know.
So to Stu's point though, I would absolutely be incredibly nervous and very concerned if any of these team members chose to actually perform those tasks at that speed. So please understand, it's competition rules only. It's not necessarily how we do those same tasks practically day in and day out.
It's a little comical, some of the events where, I mean, in the safety event, you're going in to do a rescue. And while you're down there rescuing this guy, you're over fixing something. It's like that would never, ever happen. If you're going to rescue someone, you rescue them, you get them out, and you get them off the hospital. The repair is never approached. So that's, some of the events are kind of funny, but.
Any other questions?
Great.
Why not leave, try to take games home?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the water services, customer awareness and satisfaction survey results. Karen, you do this.
So one of the great things about this survey is that we do it every 2 years, and it's been done since 1988. So 1 year longer, I think, than the top 10 has been done. So, and the great thing about it is that we are able to test customer values, perceptions, awareness. Basically, we want to benchmark these processes and social information. So when we go to gain the community's trust and build that credibility and support, we are understanding where the community is coming from. So with that, and again, I'm Karen Baker from Communications Community Engagement, and I'll introduce Michelle Neese with DHN Research, who will run us through just a snippet of the survey results. There's a lot more, so if there are more questions, we can go through those.
Great, thank you, Karen, and thank you for having me here today. As Karen said, this is just the sample. Research, there's many more available reports. As we're going through, from previous iterations, I know that it tends to inspire a lot of conversation. And so I might just suggest that if you have clarifying questions, something doesn't make sense, absolutely ask that while you're looking at the slides and get that answered. And then maybe save those questions about what's the impact on services, the work coming in, so that we can make sure we get it out.
Like that, they're dark.
Okay, so, we did a hybrid survey, which means that we called people, about half of the 400 people we called by phone. And the other half, we send them an invitation by text that says, please come take this survey online. We do that because people have different preferences for how they want to talk to us. Some people are really happy to chat on the phone and some do not want to talk to you on the phone, but they're happy to take the survey in their own time when they can. It happened late July, early August. The survey takes about 15 minutes. And our goal is for this survey to be really representative of Clean Water Services customers. So we set quotas to make sure that we talk to a mix of gender, age, different ethnicities, and income levels, matching census. And then the survey, both the live interview and the online survey, were available in Spanish and English. As Karen said, Clean Water Services has been doing this about biannually since 1988. And of course, over that time, questions and methodologies have changed. And so one thing we want to highlight is that later you'll see I talk about key values. Those were developed by talking to customers about what were the values and things that they expect from their water utility provider and sewer water utility provider as well. And then those were updated in 2014 via focus groups again. Throughout the survey, I'm going to highlight some changes over time. And we just want to preface that from 2010 through 2017, these surveys were done with an online panel, either Metro's Opt-in or Westside Voices. These panels were comprised of people who said, yes, I would love to hear about things that are going on in our community, and I'd be happy to take surveys, ask me questions, give me my input. And so we just know that people who opt in and choose to be part of that panel aren't necessarily representative of everyone in the community. And so as those panels were discontinued, it was a good opportunity to again implement the methodology. And starting in 2020, the surveys were done in a more probability-based manner, which means we take lists of all the residents. We randomly select people to call until we get our please. And there were some other changes. That just means you have to be a little bit cautious about interpreting trends over time, and I'll highlight that as we go through results. Oops. Did I miss something? It's just a little bit of delay. So this slide is a preview of my overarching story that I want to tell you. And so what we saw in this survey is that residents' understanding and awareness about water management is declining. Fewer people today know what is going on with water issues compared to the past. Nonetheless, those people are satisfied and happy with what they see. And so they don't have concerns. They don't have a negative opinion. They just don't really know. And they tend to give give you the benefit of the doubt or be neutral. And so the thing to watch with that is, again, they're giving Clean Water Services the benefit of the doubt. But if something goes wrong, there's room for them to have more of a question or sort of an initial negative reaction. And so there is an opportunity here to make sure that Clean Water Services is educating the public about what they're doing so that you can kind of build that bank of goodwill just a little bit more. Again, so what you see right here is, again, half of people say the water in the river is of high quality. 74% say I have no concerns about what's happening, about how water is being managed. So those are all good things. Here's when I dive a little bit deeper into that trend of customers not knowing what happens to water. So this is tracking over time people's answer to the question, to the best of your knowledge, what happens to the water that enters your neighborhood or local public storm drains or drainage ditches? And so what you can see is back when we were doing that opt-in panel, which is highlighted in that blue box, close to half the people would say, oh, that water goes to the nearest river, stream, or wetland. And then that number has declined over time. Now, part of that, again, is that difference in who's taking the survey, right? So people who know more about the community might know more about what happens to water. But you've still seen that decline even from 2020 to 2023, where the methodology was the same. And correspondingly, you see more people over time in that gray line saying they just don't know.
Is this a multiple choice?
Yes, they were read these options.
Okay.
That's fun. Okay, sorry. There's a lag, so it's hard for me to tell whether I've gone forward too much or not. One of the questions Clean Water Services asks every year is how connected customers feel to the 12th River. And this is because when people feel more connected to the 12th River, they also tend to be more positive about the quality of the water in our area and more satisfied with what Clean Water Services is doing. So that's part of the reason that this question is tracked. In here, you see just from 2020 to 2023, there was a drop in the number of people who feel connected to the river. And more people are saying they're just not too connected. And so this is less of that methodology change, and this is more like something's happening in these years. Now, of course, we know a lot happened. Right? We know there was a pandemic. We know a lot of people were staying at home and maybe not being as involved in the community. So that might be part of what's going on. The survey doesn't tell us exactly, but I think that's just a theme to keep in mind is that it's not just about awareness of Clean Water Services. It's sort of during the pandemic, things changed for a lot of people. That isolation or the lack of connection to the community might affect how much you know about a lot of things in your community. We are, there are some demographic differences I call out here on this slide. I'll note that we have hundreds of pages of analysis by demographic groups. We want to dive into that. In this case, not necessarily surprisingly, customers who are newer to the area are more likely to say, I'm not sure. Where you live makes a difference. So if you live in the northern region of the district, you feel less connected to the 12th River than otherwise. When we ask people if they've heard of Clean Water Services, a little over half, 65%. There again, you see that chart on the right that looks at differences across time. And up through 2020, you had about 80% who have heard of Clean Water Services. So again, you have that drop in the last 3 years related to what I was talking about, right? That we just see less familiarity. And there's certain things that won't surprise you, right? Newer residents are less likely to hear, renters are less likely than homeowners to have heard of clean water services. Younger people are less likely to have heard of clean water services. But again, there's just this overall trend to watch and an opportunity to tell your story. Okay. Those, we also, in the survey, give people some information. So the text there in smaller print is the actual question that we give. So we explain to them what clean water services is, what clean water services does, and then say, based on your experience and anything you've seen or heard, how good of a job do you think clean water services is doing? And so I'll note that half say that clean water services is doing an excellent or a good job. This is fewer than in the past, but it's not that negativity has gone up at all. Right there at the bottom, you see poor, fair, those numbers really stay the same. What it is increase from rural, I just don't know, right? I'll also point out that statewide, regardless of what type of government body we asked about, voters are very negative about leadership right now. Okay, so we asked how the state government is doing, how city government is doing. We're at some of the lowest points we've had in decades. And so Clean Water Services isn't a government agency, but there is people, for example, who sort of think that their city is the one who provides clean water services. So there's a little fuzziness, and that this number right now at this moment in time is actually a very big number. So I just also want you to keep that context in mind.
Can I ask a question about the demographic of the 400?
Uh-huh.
Was there a split on city customers versus unincorporated customers? Was there a question asked about, are you the person who pays the bill every month? Anything like that?
We do ask whether they pay the bill, and whether we ask whether they or someone else in the household versus a landlord. Right, so there's some more options there, and then we have some borders around area and zip code of the 400 people to make sure we get an appropriate mix of people who might be unincorporated versus specific regionality.
That you ask a really good question, right? Because 50% of the people that we collect, treat wastewater for, do not get any bill from the water services. It's Sheryl's residents, right? It's where Joe used to work at Sherwood. So that's a real important piece that we look at. It's like, because there is a difference. There are people that don't know much they're doing, thank you. Although the bill that you get is actually jointly from the 12 Valley Water District. So we're even more a little.
Thank you. So this chart is about those values that I talked about at the beginning, right? We have key values that we ask people, how important are these activities? And so here, the dark colored bar is responses this year. And then that gray shadow bar is what people said in 2020. And so a couple of things are important to highlight. One is that what customers value the most is that they have reliable service, that the water utilities protecting public health and environment, and keeping rates reasonable. Is keeping rates reasonable and planning for the future are important. Over 6 to 10, say those are important as well, but maybe sort of a second tier of importance. And then a little bit lower on informing and educating the public about how to reduce pollution and be an environmental leader. And you can see some slight differences in time, but it's mostly just again that those values and the ranking of the values have been pretty consistent over time. Okay. this chart takes those same values, and I'm now crossing how important people said they were with how well Clean Water Services is doing that. Okay, and so the kind of axes in the middle are the average within this sample. And so the green bar or the green box is things that are higher in importance to people and where they say Clean Water Services doing relatively better in those specific activities compared to others, right? And so these are the strengths. And so the good thing is here, a really good takeaway is that Clean Water Services is doing really well at the 3 of the things that are most important to people. So that's really important success for the organization, and that's definitely something that I would make sure to share broadly across the organization to let people know that you're doing really well at the things that are most important to us. The red box is things that are important to people, and there's kind of a little bit of room to improve to meet where they see a little bit of room to improve. What I would say is that keep rates reasonable almost always shows up here. For utilities, regardless of the utility, electric, water, so on, because of course, customers always want you to do the best you can. So have that context, and that's important to people. And then there's also here, I would say, planning for the future is the area where they can use a little bit more information about what you're doing to plan for the future. To reassure them that you are taking the appropriate steps and sort of just give that confidence in the vision. The secondary priority area is things where, if there's time, if there's resources going, these would be things to focus on, but again, they're slightly less important to people. So that I wouldn't make that the top priority. And then there's nothing in gray, which is great. So gray is where you're maybe over indexing and doing more than you need to, nothing there. So, so we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so moving into recommendations. Again, I said this before, favorability, satisfaction have gone down, awareness has gone down. I really think this is more about knowledge than it is about dissatisfaction. Okay? So what that means is don't be shy about telling your story, share good news. And the more you can share the good news, that work that you're doing, stories that can engage people, the better. Just to sort of, again, build that bank up of positive goodwill to buffer in case things sometimes, something challenging happens. Again, customers like what they do know about Clean Water Services. So again, that's a really great, strong foundation to start on. You're not trying to overcome or change people's minds. You're just trying to give them information about what you already do. And that I already mentioned that particularly, planning for the future and sharing that leadership vision is something that would also be good to do. And continue to share that good news about the values that are most important to them, right? And then finally, we just consider, I've said about, right, things have changed a lot since 2020 with the pandemic and people going through a lot of challenges and a lot of other things changed in our world. And so we quite often have a lot of our customers feeling a little bit hesitant to rely on research that was done, kind of years ago because of the amount of change. So perhaps consider doing a new round of focus group research to check in with the community again about what are their values now, what's most important to them, just to make sure that we're kind of make sure that you're updating to meet people's current needs and where they are now. That is it. So definitely time for some questions.
And I'll say too, from a communication standpoint, because some of this was alarming, frankly, and people are saying they don't know. Even though I can say, is it a matter of us sending out more information? But the issue with society now, there is so much out there right now that people can pay attention to. So getting their attention just takes more intentional work and creativeness, meeting them where they are, connecting with groups and organizations and media that they already use. But we really want, I mean, it's a constant delight and excite and whatnot. It's not enough to just send out the information because people just have to really, they have to trust you in order to pay attention to it. So getting in front of them just takes more time. It can be done, we just have to do it intentionally and slower with the reps. So,
What other customer feedback willing efforts are there? Is there quarterly? Is there anything else that happens in addition to these on a regular basis?
So I'll answer that. One of the things that we're going to be doing in addition to this, we do this on the opposite year, it's a stakeholder gap interview survey, and we'll be looking to do those next year, where we'll pick certain community groups and do that more from partners everywhere, whether it's cities or it's community partners and whatnot. So that's going to be the next one that'll be done in the spring, I believe. We've been thinking about that. But other than doing little pulse surveys and stuff through our social media and stuff like that, that's kind of the only other stuff that we do. So, but getting all the information and gathering it takes time and effort. So we're working on a big research strategy right now. So connecting groups inside the organization to see what groups they want to connect with, tying that all together. So.
You think some of the drop historically on the first slide there that showed the lines coming down, is part of that because compared to the 2014, 2016, and now we have 50% more people, something like that. And in that time frame, there hasn't been a lot of Water Services hasn't been in the headlines a lot.
Is that a good thing? That would be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing that it's going down. Is it a good thing that it's going down when you look at, we have so many more people out there now? And it's been quite a while since we were in the headlines for anything bad or sensational or had any big problems or anything, and you just, does that contribute to that, the satisfaction going down? They just, we've dropped out of sight, and so they don't know anything about us.
But is that a bad thing? That was where I was kind of gonna kind of rip off of that. That was going to be kind of my question of, I've worked in cities that had sewer as part of them, and it was a goal of ours to kind of be under the radar, right? So familiarity with clean water services, I'm not sure that is, I mean, is that a desire? Is that something that we want, or that Clean Water Services wants? I don't know. It's like flush without fear is kind of a mantra of it's like you don't want those headlines, and you'd rather, and frankly, like Clean Water Services isn't on the front line of rates. I know that you have rates that you set rates, but it gets billed through us and then TBWD for the unincorporateds. And so I feel like why would people be familiar with Clean Water Services, and like why market yourselves?
Couple of things there. You're right. I mean, Karen and I joked about, we could jack that to 100%. We did like a raw sewage overflow,
yeah,
everybody would know who we were instantly. But from a knowingness standpoint, particularly with the investments we have to make sure that people know what they're paying for. This was especially true when we were going through the 12 to 15% rate increases at 20 years ago. Who the heck is the Unified Sewage Agency, and why are they doing this to us? The other thing is, increasingly, when we look at water quality issues in this basin, A lot of them have been solved through technology, investments in treatment plants like this, investments in controlled industrial sources. And a lot of it lies in the feet of individual behavior change. A lot of it is stormwater. You'll see that. I'm sure you've heard that at the commission here. So much of our permit is tilted towards stormwater. That's where DEQ is focusing. A lot of that is a function of what happens individually in places. Plus, we're going to be in a situation where we're under a lot of pressure to raise those rates on permit, because of permit on the stormwater side. And making sure that people understand what they're paying for.
But that comes through the city as well.
What? That's
Permitting, I mean, people think it's us.
right, absolutely. And the thing is I think that it begs a different question too, is who's our primary audience? I mean, we do have people we bill, but in a lot of ways, you and your city council are Clean Water Services primary audience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that those, and that's where the stakeholder gap analysis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised as many people knew about it, frankly. When I talk to people, I say, yeah, I'm on this advisory board for Clean Water Services. They go, oh, really? They think it's a federal agency. That's not uncommon. I would say it's more common than people saying, oh, yeah, those guys are out in Hillsborough. No, it's very much so. I think it's a federal agency. I mean, these are attorneys and doctors and guys like that, I mean, it's just, it is an under the radar service, that's for sure. And like you say, the bill is hidden, you guys get blamed for that.
Yeah. And the permits and it strikes me that I would love to have this kind of work coordinated with the cities. Honestly, we were just going through our own community survey that we asked questions about stormwater, about sewer. And like, I'd completely forgotten that you guys did one, and it would be nice to, and I actually given advice to our folks of like, we need to be sharing with the fire district and Clean Water Services and the other stakeholders that we're asking questions about. And I would think something of the same thing with you guys.
But one of the questions we too is, well, how does this compare to cities in Washington County, other communities in the region? Michelle can answer some of those questions because they might be clients of hers, although she's probably keep it, confidential. But being able to share, I think would be really.
Yeah, because we all share the same, we all share people. That's the bottom line.
Sure, so I heard under the radar times, and then I saw that there were two semi-related questions possibly. One was saying it affects the environment in downstream upper right water. The other one is an environmental leader, seen as an environmental leader. So if you're under the radar, you're probably not going to be seen as a leader. And I'm curious just about sort of the genesis of those questions. And it's probably more of an internal question for water services rather than the research part of it. Good question.
Well, when we did, back to 2006, I was here in 2006, when we first worked with community groups to come up with those were summaries based on, a whole bunch of things that they said, and that's how we kind of came to separate those two out. And I forget what led to specifically setting apart the leader versus protecting the environment. They kind of create those categories. Right.
Yeah, so it was really that kind of qualitative research that we've done focus groups periodically. One of the things we do with our focus groups is what do you think an organization that does what we do should do? And we want to test what the values are. I mean, should be picking up leaves. Maybe another commission will hear about that. That doesn't show up, but protecting public health, protecting the environment, rates, planning for the future, education, environmental leader. I think at that time it was right after we just won the Governor's Sustainability Award. So we were kind of at a higher profile on some of those things. Be interesting since we haven't updated those. We are getting a lot from political pressure. I'm sure she'll be work in that environment here too, in terms of climate change and what do you associate with that. It doesn't really show up here as a value. I think the next time that we do this research, that the community is going to come up.
Do you have a question that is slightly like that? And I forget how we worded it, but it was a value that put in there. We didn't, it wasn't one that we asked the communities to do a data on that. It's very related to climate, but the bottom line is with this surveys, these values we honed in on them in 2006. We updated them in 2014, so they still reign true. I mean, it's going to be 2024, 2025. So that's coming out to actually test values, and that's actually what would be interesting to coordinate with the cities on and our community partners. We share all this data. I mean, people around the organization share with the cities, so maybe we come up.
I think it'd be really interesting to know with this commission,
Mhm.
you know, what do you think of it? Elaine?
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, so obviously, given that 74% of the folks had no concerns about water management, that's a pretty strong signal. I wouldn't think any of the response, I wouldn't have used the word alarming with any of this information myself. But one thing I'm curious about is, I mean, obviously there was a big change in the method between 2016 and 2020. So, you know, I'm kind of separating how I look at those groups of data. And I just wonder if, I've got one comment and one question. Here's my question is, did you gather data in a way that allowed you to test whether any of these changes were statistically significant?
So the 2020 and 2023 results were both probability based. And so one could do comparisons over time.
That might be interesting to do because sometimes you can look at these lines and they may be moving. But if, you know, you're trying to get an estimate and your error bars are pretty wide, you know, it might not be as strong a signal as it appears at first. The comment I want to make is about people feeling connected to the Tualatin River or not, because I was working for a park provider during much of the pandemic, and we had record numbers of people coming outside to be in nature during the pandemic. The parks were getting loved to death. And it seems a bit of a disconnect to me that people would report that they felt less connected to the Tualatin River. And so, you know, I can't help but wonder, and it's pure speculation, but whether the idea of being less connected or more connected to anything, I mean, let's face it, the pandemic was really disconnecting for a lot of people. And I wonder how much it was a reaction to the word.
Right. I mean, that's one of the challenges of this type of survey, right? That's, you always kind of wish you could have conversations with people and ask them why. Right? That's again where focus groups are really helpful. I mean, there's other methods too. You can very short interviews where you just literally ask people what is the to you in a setting, right? Just trying to really understand.
Yeah, kind of flesh it out so you can contextualize those answers.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Great, thank you. All right, next up, we have our climate action update. The commission action here is review and draft in law.
Start introducing myself. I'm Jamie Wallace. I am work for Jack Liang in Strategy Group. I have been here under 2 months, so I'm going to ask for your grace because I have so much to learn. Nothing like starting a new job and getting to present with all of you. And then I have some of the steering committee from our climate action here with me. So if I misspeak or anything that I miss, I invite them to jump in and help me out. So Today, or this evening, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of where we've been since we came to you in July, to talk to you and where we're heading, and then have a discussion and get some input from you all about some performance measures for our climate action roadmap. So back in July, Team Lou came to talk to you about what our climate action roadmap is, the purpose of it, and how Clean Water Services is taking action around climate. This is just a slide that she had put up, indicating all of the things that we're facing and grappling with as we look towards the future for adaptation and mitigation of the climate impacts, and the risks that we face and how we're going to be changing the way that we do business as we adapt to the climate. So the purpose of the Climate Action Roadmap is really this guiding document. It's called a strategic roadmap because it's really, I look at it as the North Star. Where are we heading for clean water services around climate? And that then rolls into these performance or these roadmaps that we have for departments and programs. And so this is that guiding overarching view of what are our values and what are our goals. And so one of the things that I'm starting to take on is how do we operationalize this roadmap? How do we integrate this into the way that Clean Water Services thinks about mitigating our risks, thinks about mitigating and adapting to current and future states? And that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today. Oops, jumped ahead. Around how are we looking at, sorry, pressing buttons. How are we operationalizing this, and then how are we measuring to make sure that we're meeting our goals? And when I talk about operationalizing this plan, what we still need to do is create common language that we're all starting from the same level of understanding of what we mean by mitigation, adaptation, risk, all of those areas that we're going to be working towards. And then creating tools so that we have a common set decision-making parameters that we're working from as we're working through the continuum of all the services that we have. And then we talk about integrative project management. So we really want to make sure that all of the departments are talking to each other, and we know that if the project spans multiple departments, we're all working together, and we know what the right hand and the left hand is doing. So that's really that capacity building piece and how we're going to operationalize this plan. There's, just as a reminder, the plan is organized around 5 goals from our strategic approach, our strategic plan. And really what I'm focusing on tonight in the discussion is this first goal around organizational excellence and how we're adapting the strategic plan into the work. Kind of like I think about it in terms of our equity work. You know, eventually we get to a point where we look through a lens to apply equity and get through a lens that we're looking at climate adaptation and mitigation through all of the facets of our work. The plan or the strategic roadmap has 16 objectives that are linked to these 5 goals, 63 initiatives that span 3 phases. They're not tied to any specific time frame. And then within that, we've collected a list of 89 different projects. So I don't want to miss the fact that we're doing a lot of technical work. We're doing a lot of project work already around mitigating and climate change. It's just not been necessarily brought under the coordinated umbrella yet. And so that's where we're working towards. So again, there's a lot of technical information in the climate action roadmap. I'm not going to talk about it today. And I'll be honest, it's not where my area of expertise is, but we do have a lot of experts, and I'm starting to learn all the different facets of the work we're doing. I think some of you may have been on a subcommittee around the West Basin master planning work. And so that's an example of where they're going to be doing some modeling to help us inform across clean water services. What are the risks that we're going to be looking at And then how are we going to be managing to those risks and the severity of those risks? And so that's something that is starting that will help inform the bigger goals that we're trying to achieve. This slide is just a reminder how this links to the performance excellence work that we're doing. And what I really want to dive into now is a discussion about performance measures. And we have a look at it in terms of levels of service. Those are the outputs, the widgets, how many miles of pipe are we cleaning and inspecting each year, just as an example. And then the performance metrics are the measure of efficiency and effectiveness of the work that we're doing. Are we achieving our goals? Are we doing what we say we're going to do? And so that's what we're looking at now, is how are we setting that up for building the capacity to do climate work within clean water services. So two things I want to talk with you about tonight is one of the things the steering committee, we had a conversation about clearly defining the parameters. We can call them criteria. There's a lot of different words that we can use here, but really what's that container we're creating about how are we thinking about the climate work? Because there's so much that we could plan for, but we can't do it all. So we need to start to prioritize and think about where are we going to be focusing first. And so we talked about some of the parameters that we can use for decision-making and prioritization include where do we have control, where do we have influence, where are we partners at the table, and focusing on parsing some of those projects out in those different areas. What's in service to our permit? Those are some mandates that we have to meet. And we provide equitable outcomes to all of our customers. And so using those to prioritize and then think about how we're integrating these decision-making parameters, criteria across the continuum of work. So from the planning to the design and construction, whether it's our infrastructure or through permitting, all the way to operations and maintenance. So that's the idea of how we want to use these criteria or parameters for that decision-making. So one of my questions to you all right now is, if you're thinking about, and I think about this maybe in terms of, I have a lot of history with transportation and capital improvement plans, and that always is more projects that can ever be completed with the dollars available. So there's criteria that have to be set, and then there's ranking that's done to create a list of priorities of projects. And that's kind of, I think, the ultimate goal for these 89 projects that we have listed, and to eventually get that prioritization process, kind of like our CIP for the other side. I want to say the conveyance, I'm still learning about, sorry. But what parameters, what from this list jumps out at you? Are we missing things? Questions? Love feedback on this.
Does your permit with the DEQ require you to do this?
My 2-month knowledge is there's some things that I think.
Requirements are, what was the question?
With your license with the DEQ, do they require you to do this kind of planning and?
Climate action plan, not specifically. I mean, there are certain things that you do have to do in terms of planning.
So there's no guidance or goal, you gotta make it up yourself.
And I think as you recall from July, when Tank talked about it, I think Jamie was talking about this is really about operational pieces, like how are we going to manage this big utility related to climate change? And it's about, and so much of that business play. I don't know if you remember working with Bill Gaffey. One of his best questions used to be, one of the best things he used to say is, we design, he was an engineer, designed by certain parameters. And he said, we're designing by driving through the rearview mirror, right? So we're looking at what used to happen. What we're increasingly seeing is what used to happen is what's happening right now. See these frequency integration of rainstorms and pieces like that. So that's that resiliency part. That's a big word. Right? So, and Logan, you want to add something there too?
There is somewhat of as it relates to our shade credit program, as we think about purple strategies with how climate change is impacting the periodicity of the mass, the intensity of the mass, and then also things like heat blooms, right, or heat domes, excuse me, heat domes that we've had. So, as Jamie just alluded to, and Mark, as we think about the planning, design, construction going down, we are being more intentional, especially as the community grows, and how we think about not just shade credit, but I'm calling it our thermal. Right, so we have shade credit, it's going for 20 years now. But we have basically picked the low hanging fruit, right? So Jill and her team are doing an excellent job of stewarding those lands, but we need to start thinking more broadly. So this is where water reuse becomes an option. So rather than putting that warmer water directly back into the Tualatin, we can find another use for it that reduces that thermal impact. This is a way to think about climate change and how we actually do our business with a forward viewpoint. So there are some areas that do relate to our permit, and it is causing us to sort of shift our viewpoint and look at other alternatives. And it's a fascinating cost benefit exercise, right? Because it really changes the nature of how you define the value of a reuse project. Consider.
Thank you. Mark, it would seem like the topic that we just covered from this customer survey, that there's something there around how is CWS doing positioning and informing the ratepayers that CWS is thinking about this and doing something about it. What I want to know is my government doing something about this problem that we all know, and since the 12th River is a big part of the climate, I would think there's something that would need to be about awareness and education about all this stuff.
Yeah, and I think once we have that really solidified internally, that we all have a common approach to this based on the guidance we're getting from this roadmap, then, working with Karen and her team to start that externally too. And especially on the partner piece, right? Like, we are not fully responsible for all of the projects, but there's things that we can be doing with our partner agencies to make sure that we're in alignment with. And so I'm trying to wrap my head around maybe 9 projects, what are we actually currently, doing, and what is kind of the wish list that we want to do. And again, where do we have influence versus like absolute oversight and control.
Do you have more to show us?
I do, but if you have any comments on the parameters before I move to the performance measures.
Go for it. Go ahead.
So kind of the bigger step is, once we have some parameters in common language, how are we then measuring that we're really setting that foundation piece and starting to operationalize this roadmap? And so this steering committee, we worked together and came up with these 3 draft performance measures. And so the first one is creating common language and understanding about how we adapt to climate change and mitigation. The 2 aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. That we've defined parameters, we have clear decision-making criteria. And then the third one, I think, builds upon, so it's developing scenarios. So right now with the West Basin Master Plan, we're going to be doing some statistical modeling, which is really that quantitative piece, but then scenario planning takes a quantitative and qualitative look at what are we going to be adapting our infrastructure to, what strategies that we do to manage our system and that continuum of our work do we need to maybe adapt given the scenarios that we're going to be planning for, or what do we need to just maybe scrap and walk away from and do something different as we're looking towards managing to the scenario. So it's developing those scenarios. So these are the 3 performance measures that we are proposing. And one of my questions is that if you were to pick up a document, we're a community, or you're picking up a document as our advisory committee, would these measures in the short term help you understand
where we're headed and if we're making progress on the goals. Maybe that's not a, no, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so this is really interesting because I'm looking at these performance measures and they are very much about how Clean Water Services is going to do
Yes.
climate action planning. Pardon?
They're not the technical, like, the detailed technical.
But you also, theoretically, you could achieve all of these performance measures and have severe degradation in the river water quality and still be successful. So in my head, there's a disconnect here. When I was thinking about performance measures, I was thinking about outcomes, and forgive me, I'm getting to be probably a real stuck record here, but thinking about the river health as the foundation of really an outcome-based performance measure. I would think about the water quantity at different stages along the river, temperatures at different locations down the river, some way to snapshot the health of the biota, macroinvertebrate surveys or something. Jill could talk about this in her sleep probably for all of us. But anyway, I would think about more outcome and watershed health-based measures.
And I apologize if I wasn't clear. The intention is to get to those.
Okay.
But right now, the most immediate short term for where we're doing is how are we measuring building that capacity and building that that. And so the intention is to have those like health of the river, and are we, meeting all of the other goals? Those will be developed and come. And I definitely agree with you. These do not tell us if we are achieving, adapting or mitigating the impacts.
It might be helpful to have something in those performance measures around staff empowerment and understanding and a direct line between the performance measures and the on-the-ground outcomes. I'm not going to articulate that very well, but I think you know where I'm trying to go.
Yeah. Right, because if you don't have the staff understanding why and the what and how their work connects to this greater picture, then we may be missing some of the potential.
Do you have data points on water temperature in the river at certain times of the year? I figured you did, yeah. And that's what Logan was talking about. Exactly. Yeah. So you must know, that's a goal that seems definable.
We have no shortage of data.
Yeah. That's what I thought, but see, that's when you can see that's quantitative, right?
We're gonna have our lab people like, I think one of the challenges is, and I think this is where Jamie has a challenge and where we have to be focused on this is, how do you roll all that up into, I don't think we get a single score. We get an A minus, we get a 95, we get 83, but to bring it together, because we do have flow data, right? We have 35 sites on the river, tributaries of the river, we're sampling on a bi-weekly basis. Temperature, all these parameters, but how do you pull all this together? And some of the performance things, one of my pet peeves on some of this stuff is, we talk about it in service to permit. Permit's important, don't get me wrong, I don't want Diane going to jail. I'm going on record for that. But it's really in service to the river, right? It's service to the watershed. It just happens to be a tool of the federal government, state government. We're trying to figure out how we've got all these disparate pieces. We're all working toward that. See it in our mission statement. How do you roll that into something? Across 69 objectives or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this slide, which is whatever, slide 9 in your presentation, I do feel like this disconnect between that and slide 6, the purpose of a climate action roadmap, which those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ensure CWS is prepared to adapt to climate change, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce carbon footprint. Like those things feel like you build performance measures off of those. And that's not what I see on that slide, that the draft performance measure. So these feel like I can get my arms around.
Relatable.
Yeah.
They're big, super big.
I don't know why this isn't going back. I think the slide, I think it's slide 4. So this is
Very delayed.
so slide 4, this is what the performance measures are relating back to. I get that, so I think there is kind of this two-pronged way that I'm looking at is how are we building the capacity? Like when I'm new and I'm saying, okay, I'm hearing different definitions of even what we're talking about adaptation and mitigation. So we want to get a foundational knowledge so that when we walk in the room, everybody knows this is the way that we as Clean Water Services are talking about. Because as I'm doing research and trying to get smarter on this, there's so much out there that is just a little bit different and nuanced. So creating that common approach. How do we operationalize this strategic plan? Like I can hand this plan, I'm gonna pick on Logan, and you're gonna implement it or think about it differently than Joe would for this. We want to provide a little bit more structure around that. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that a lot of stuff is happening in East Basin, and I'm only referring to East Basin and West Basin because I just got a little briefing on it, so I feel like I use that word, but there's so much I don't know right now. And so, and I don't even know what I don't know. So starting to learn about that to help bring that in and not lose sight of all the technical stuff, because that really is like, how are we being leaders? But if we don't have the common foundation in which we think about when somebody's planning a project or when they're permitting an industry to design and construct something, and then we're just kind of disjointed and we're not working towards that integrated approach which we're trying to achieve. So I know this feels like it's a little bit maybe way far back and we want to be doing the actual work, and we are doing the actual work, but we still, I think, need to get some of that foundations. So that's my vision coming in from what I've picked up in my short time here. And so don't want to lose sight of all that great work that's already happening and bringing that in. And that's why we have some of our steering committee to help, educate me and help elevate this. But yeah, it feels like it's a little bit fundamental right now.
As an aside, it sounds like that you would be a perfect candidate for the operations challenge team.
I don't want to give Sherilyn like some kind of bad flashback or something here, but I'm trying to figure out what the purpose is. If I look at slide 4, things that you're gonna say. It seems like those are things that are just already cooked into what Clean Water Services is doing. And somehow I can't get my head around why you can't just keep doing what you're doing, why we need another plan to manage what is already happening. And instead of putting all these resources into the plan, maybe they could go into some of these 4 or 5 goals on this sheet and keep moving yourself ahead. When you look around at the work you've done with resource recovery here at the plants and the generating your own electricity and the through-light stuff and the planning I know you've done for future changes in precipitation patterns and intensities and working all that in with the design and construction standards. It's like we're trying to make up something to fill a gap that somebody said, oh my God, we got to have a climate action plan. When we're really already, everything we're doing is a climate action plan. And So maybe I'm just totally missing something,
I
or
thought exactly the same thing. I know that's what you guys are doing.
we're the same generation.
Yeah, that's what you guys are doing. Yeah.
I don't know. I go back to what we just heard from the ops challenge, right? There was a group of people who never interacted with each other before and got a greater perspective across the entire Clean Water Services Agency. And I worked for government for a really long time. And regardless of, all the work that's done, you still have silos that happen. And so what this plan is trying to do is say, let's work together, because maybe natural systems is doing some really good work that another department or division is maybe duplicating. And so then we're being inefficient. And so, and maybe we're not necessarily doing the best we could if we were working together, right? Like, so if we were coming together, we could get even further to two separate groups doing things without knowing. So the purpose of this strategic roadmap is to help us really understand the entire Clean Water Services view, what we're doing so that we can maximize our efficiency and better coordinate. That's what I see in my time here. I don't know if anybody else has another explanation.
I think that's a very good way to put it, Jenny. I mean, you've seen the problem, in terms of, we're always planning for the next permit. So what's that next permit? And every time we think the next permit is going to be something that's going to be really difficult to achieve. So how do we mine those pieces? Make sure that we do it as efficiently as possible. And we'll have, early next year, we're going to have our regulatory affairs folks come in and talk about what the 5-year and 10-year compliance strategy is. And a lot of it's how do we leverage these pieces, because we need to get more integrated as we get more problems get more complex. I also will say that there's a bit of a public imperative. Our board is getting pressure on this issue, and they need to be able to answer these questions pretty succinctly in terms of what are you doing to address these things? Like, I wouldn't walk the same way, right? We've been in the climate adaptation business for 53 years now. Yeah, in some ways. And granted, it used to be more of a sewage treatment business of pumps and pipes, and, it's a public health thing. Now we're more resource recovery. We really moved from pumps and pipes to watersheds and resource recovery. It's nice, it's kind of baked into our mission as the environment. Public health is kind of baked into our mission. It's not like you're throwing something under a bus, right? You're in the transportation. Imagine if you're in a transportation department, that would be a very, very different thing. And they're thinking about the environment too, but it's a different mission.
We're literally talking about two different things. We're talking about what Elaine brought up, which is the health of the river. And then we're talking about how to run a business and how we do it in a way that is friendly to the climate. And the decision-making processes that we go through, making sure that we're doing it consistently across all of our divisions. And I think you're trying to give us a roadmap to get there, but it's as high level gets right now.
I just don't want to see the plan become the mission rather than, trying to do the right thing. People can get diverted and all your energy goes into creating the plan and you forget about what are you really trying to do.
But if you never evaluate, if you never benchmark or circle back, then you've got to have some way to measure whether you're moving forward, treading water, or rolling back. And I think that there are a few different buckets for those performance measures. And one of them, I get that you need to do these internal process performance measures that you rolled out so far. I already talked about the ecological outcomes, but like you have some things here on my handout, page 3 here, under the purpose of the roadmap, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce CWS's carbon footprint. You know, those are some performance measures that might make a lot of sense under, for example, operations, maybe elsewhere, but it also might fall very neatly under that umbrella. And then there are going to be partnership and influence areas that are going to mean a lot to clean water services. Stormwater. How are you going to deal with stormwater without working with all those other partners in the region? Anyway, I'll quit.
I want to say is, it's not really two different things than running the business and protecting health. You know, if I was like channeling Diane, who's sick right now, she would be talking about practical. Right? I think about the cogeneration facility. We did an ROI, and it was a 7-year payback, $14 million project, something like that. We were able to get the payback because we had lots of investment, energy trust. It reduces our carbon footprint, reduces the amount of energy that we have to bring to this organization, improves the effectiveness of the treatment plant itself. Ultimately, I know Bowen's working on some things. Is there a way that we can start generating non-rate revenue through other pieces? It also has this, it also has a climate benefit too. I think often the policy question that our board's wrestling with sometimes is, do we use a 7-year payback, you know, kind of standard ROI on something, or we've got a climate lens, we use a different type of payback, and maybe it's a 9-year payback. Just make sure we're really clear on those decisions.
Can I? Hi, I came in a little late. I'm Laura Porter. Hi, Elaine. Good to see you. When Team left, I kind of tried to keep the boat afloat until Jamie came on board. And so I just got to tell you guys, I'm so excited that Jamie is here, because when Team presented to you guys in July, she's like, all right, we're going to bring back these draft performance measures to CWAC at this meeting. And I was like, okay, how do we do this, guys? And so we started going through this list of 89 projects and starting to go, okay, what are you going to have done next year? What are some milestones? Help me understand all these things, right? And so I was digging into the technical, because that's my background. And then Jamie comes on and she's like, how does this fit into the overall picture? And so I don't know if you guys saw that performance excellence diagram with the arrows that are going all different directions. Well, that's kind of what we were doing. As you guys know, we have a lot of really passionate people at Clean Water Services that want to do really good work, right? And so we have all this work going on, but Jamie's like, how do we coordinate it? How do we make sure that we're all focusing on the same things? And so right now we're looking at that capacity piece, but we will definitely be coming back and looking at that technical information too. We're just trying to make sure all those arrows are pointing the right way so that we're getting the best return on investment.
Actually, I forgot there's a couple more slides. Is that okay to just finish? This is really helpful for me too, because hearing what's important to you all and understanding what you're seeing will help as we continue, as I continue to learn. And just, I don't have a background in climate work, so I'm learning this too and relying on a lot of the smart people we have. So the next steps is.
I apologize, can I have one?
What
you just said? I remember that meeting where we had the 89 with all the arrows that I glazed over and didn't understand it, but because I didn't have the benefit of this to start with. So this is, for me, has been very helpful.
So we have this steering committee, and one of my views is that failures of initiatives happen when you don't have the right people at the table. So as a steering committee, we're rechartering, because I'm new and I get to say, what is it that we want to be doing? How do we want to work together as a group? And who all needs to be at the table? So we're in the beginning stages of that. And then we're going to be working to continue to integrate the roadmaps into the department roadmaps and program roadmaps, which is something that I have a lot to learn about
And then we're going to continue the climate work that's already underway, hoping that like the West Basin Master Plan will help inform how we're going to be thinking about modeling and bring that into some scenario planning. So we're really clear on what are we going to be adapting for and mitigating into the future beyond what we already know we're doing. And so just final slides schedule. We came to you in July with the roadmap, and then we said we were going to come back here in November with the performance measures. So you have just gotten my thinking a lot with our steering committee. So we'll continue to move forward with this work. And then the next steps are in April through June. We'll be incorporating the update to the board with all the other roadmaps through the budget process. So with that, I don't know if there's any final questions. Really appreciate your input, thoughts.
Thanks. I keep staring at everything as a resource, nothing is wasted, and I'm trying to figure out how that goes in here. So if you could figure out a way to do that.
Next time I come back, I'll change.
We'll take a pause here. We skipped over acknowledging, reviewing, accepting the summary of the July 12th meeting. We'll have the commission. Next up, Stephanie, we have invitation, public comment. Do we have any public members present?
No. So we had Dale Peak on virtually for a little while. It's very early in the meeting, but he's.
Great, thank you. Okay, Mark, you can proceed with announcements.
Good. I think the biggest announcement I personally have is that it's, you know, it's in 6 days, not that anybody's counting. No, I am retired at the end of this month. I am going to be helping with some of the transition in December and January. I've been in clean water services for 32 years. Actually, I've only been in clean water services for 23. I was a storage agency for 9 years or something. And it's been just a tremendous honor, privilege to be able to work with this group for almost 20 years now, ever since my boss left in 2003 or 2004. But I will be here. I will be at the next CWAC meeting as well in January. I'm helping with the planning of that piece too, as we go through chief staff here. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. It's been a real pleasure to work with you. I'm sure I'll see you in the community. And I certainly hope we get together sometime in January. I try to get together with a bunch of folks that I've worked with. The advisory commission, I worked with Tony Weller for years. I couldn't see him, so folks like that. I want to say thank you for that. And then I guess the other announcement is that our next meeting is on January 10th, 2024. That, we have a subcommittee. Oh, yeah, do we? Yeah, or, oh, yeah. So my question, and that would be the question, I don't have, Stephanie's done such a good job with the annotated agenda that I so those of you that were on the Sub-Basin, West Basin, ad hoc committee, I know you met earlier this month. Who are the people that are on? Joe, I know it's you. And so anything that you want to provide a report on that, Shannon, or?
Well, I think our plan is in January, since we're going to be, the March is going to come back, and that would be a great opportunity for the subcommittee to share their thoughts and be back.
The other thing that I'm working on right now, that probably delivered to February, is we're looking at a 2024 work plan for CWAC. What are the issues that we're looking at for the 12, through those 12 months? These months we're going to take off. July, pieces like that. So you do a picture of what those big topics are, including West Basin Master Plan, climate action plan, pieces like that.
Is there a packet of information that the smaller group got could be shared?
first presentation, and I'm happy to share that. Beyond that, we're not going to be putting together some materials related, related to this. Maybe give me some additional requests for things that could help. But we talked about providing some of the reports and a couple of slides with notes describing the oral.
There's just speaking as just one of the people that was there. There's just, I'm still feeling like I'm struggling to kind of get my arms around all the information. And when we met, the staff did a fantastic job of like kind of hitting all the high points, but there are certain areas where I just really feel like I need to dig in and get a little bit more of a foundation. And so that's when I'm gonna circle back to Shannon with and see if there's some existing staff memos or something like that that I could read to kind of understand some of the background better.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you for hanging out with us. Now.
Right here.